powerful things.
And welcome to Corner Cafe. I am your host, Rachel Maines, and today I'm coming from the KLTT studio instead of the cafe, and I have Andy Pate back with me. We're going to talk about evolution. Welcome to Corner Cafe, Andy.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you here. And for those listeners who don't know, you are on the Restoration Show
Yes.
with John, and you just, you offer some entertainment, right?
I like to do that now and then, yes. I talk a lot of politics, talk some religion. I do movie reviews. I'll be doing 2 more today, and that's what I do.
Fun. Love it. And I want to mention to our listeners, those listening on radio, go to our website, cornercaferadio.com, and you can check out our videos. And actually, I do have a wide shot here in the studio. I'm going to wave to those who are watching via video, and we can see you, Andy, in the cool studio. Woohoo!
I'm doing the wave.
You're doing the wave.
Okay.
So let's get into our conversation. I loved our conversation last time when we were at the cafe and we were talking about evolution, and I just felt like there was more to talk about. This is just a fascinating topic, and I believe it's not talked about enough in the church. To be better equipped with the gospel, we also need to know what the world thinks about with science, right, Andy?
Oh, absolutely. I think, we go around, we quote the Bible, quote the Bible, quote the Bible. I'm all for that. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. However, we have to understand we live in a society today that it doesn't believe in that foundation.
Right.
And so you have to reestablish that foundation, and then you can lead them to the Lord and help them to understand their Creator. If they don't believe in a Creator, they're not going to believe in a Savior.
Right.
And we tend to leave that part out.
Yeah, and if that's the overarching worldview of our culture, then before they can receive the Savior, we have to kind of knock down these layers, right?
Right. Yeah, and, a lot of times we can get pretty angry at them. I want people to understand, as I was raised as an atheist, as an evolutionist, that's all we knew. That's all I knew. That's all I was taught. And when you're totally immersed in that and it's all you know, then you hear people talking about a creator, about God, somebody that you would have to submit to, right?
Right.
Somebody who actually made all this happen. You think they're crazy.
Yeah.
And so when they can come off rather dismissive or rude, please understand it's only because it's like you're talking flat earth to them.
Right.
Okay. You're talking completely outside their entire paradigm.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's this perception. I mean, I knew I got this at CU Boulder.
No.
Poor you. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, at CU?
Yeah. Wow.
That bastion of open-mindedness?
Right. I mean, I was very blessed to go there with, to higher education. I'm thankful. But yes, it's definitely antithesis, my worldview versus CU's worldview, if you will, with the professors and stuff.
Yeah, it's a great school. Actually.
Yeah, it's a great school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was kind of like, oh, you poor thing, you poor Christian thing, you're just, a little ignorant. Let me help you to understand how it really is,
Right.
What's real science. And ironically, I would say, just the belief in evolution and coming from nothing into going to apes and so forth, I would say that's a fantasy and that's hard to believe. But yet, our culture as a whole believes that. This is the worldview.
Well, let's keep in mind, Rachel, they have to believe that. Without evolution, you must have God. There is no...
Yeah, good
it's
point.
this or that. I mean, yeah, if we didn't come from lower and simple up to the complex and now what we have today, that means we had to be created.
Right.
At this level already. And
the new thing is aliens. Aliens created us.
Yes.
They seeded us.
Yes. Well, now that's interesting, though. The entire space seed theory, I won't go deeply into it because I got some other stuff. But that has all been... Do you know why we have the space seed theory?
Because I think the scientists have realized our DNA is too complex. It looks like it's more complex than a computer. And they're like, we've had to have some sort of creator.
Well, there's DNA and there's many other things. There is too much complexity. Here's the thing. They lack evidence, and that's what we're going to get into in a moment. The lack of evidence for strict Darwinian evolution, which is, by the way, gradualism, or punctuated equilibrium, which is just mutations leaping it forward now and then.
Yeah.
The lack of evidence of that, and the lack of evidence is overwhelming. I mean, it's incredible. Lack of evidence. You're in a room with basically nothing in it. Right. That's the evidence, okay? The lack of evidence means that they have to look beyond and say somehow intelligence had to be infused.
Right.
We don't want to believe in an almighty creator. Instead, we're going to say aliens did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And can I kind of get into one big problem that Christians have?
Yes, absolutely.
They're intimidated.
Yes.
We are intimidated. And I think it's common because let's face it, overwhelmingly the culture believes in evolution, even much of the church, which breaks my heart because I came from that world, right?
Yeah.
And I understand how bad science it is. But we feel cornered, we feel overwhelmed. And this is because of the dominance of the public square by evolutionism.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to be reviewing a movie today where they talk about evolution, of course, and it's, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
It's the only movie I've ever reviewed, by the way, that has "of the" twice in it. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
It's kind of like a tongue twister.
Kingdom of the Planet of the, the city of the county of the state of the apes.
I'm not just going to interject. I don't think I want to see that because I like animals. I like animals so much. Like if any of the apes get hurt or anything, it just really bothers me. Like,
well, they're CGI apes.
I know that's like fake apes, but I don't. It just really bothers me. Any real animals or fake animals, just can't handle it.
That's a very good point. Well, then you may not like this.
No.
But anyway, well, they have the other side, as I call it, the evolutionists. They dominate the big four, and that would be media, academia, entertainment, and big tech. And because of this, they overwhelm your senses. When you go to, let's say you go to school, and they can show a whole string of creatures, both existing and extinct, and they can line them up with their similarities and say, you see, you go from this to this to this to this to this, and just change a little here, change a little there, change a little here, change a little there, add a few billion years, add water, stir, and presto, you have evolution. And it happened, and it comes off as very intimidating, especially when they say, look, all the quote-unquote experts believe in this. By the way, I was one of them. I wasn't an expert. I was just a kid who believed in evolution, and my whole family was hard left evolutionist academia. They were teachers and they taught this stuff.
Yeah.
And, I came from that side. Here's the thing. Don't be intimidated. They're not that smart.
Right.
All right. They're not that smart. And one thing I always had to ask my dad was this: Dad, if we're so right, why do we have to stack the deck?
Right.
Why do we have to prevent the other side from being heard?
Right.
For us to win? Why do we have to make sure that the other side can only be heard in these little corners somewhere, but ours is publicly funded with trillions and zillions and gazillions of dollars over decades, right? To all teach one side, and we have to do that just to get people to believe in what we teach.
Right.
If we're so right, why do we have to stack the deck like that? And that's when I started looking at the evidence, which we'll look at some pretty quick here.
Yeah, that's funny. It's kind of like the chia pet, just add water and billions of years, and there you go.
Yeah. Well, the idea is similarity proves common ancestry. And let me tell you what evolutionists make sure that you don't think about as two words: if, then. So everybody listening right now, I want you to think of these two words: if, then. If this happened, then I should see that. They don't want you to think about that.
Right.
Well, yeah, we do. No, you don't. Yeah, we do. No, you don't. You really don't. Okay, let me give you an example. If we all evolved on one planet and one ecosystem, right? Water, land, air, right? One ecosystem, then we'd be very similar in a lot of ways. That's true, right?
Yeah.
But what if we were created to live on one planet with one ecosystem by an intelligent God? What would you see?
Right.
We'd all be very similar. We'd have very similar limbs and, and very similar appendages that would help us to function in this ecosystem. The movie I'm about to see, well, which I already saw, it's got apes, and apes are our nearest quote unquote ancestor, relative.
Right.
If apes didn't exist, they'd simply pick the next closest one and say that's proof of evolution.
I always thought maybe the Lord made apes as a test, if you will. Because I was like, well, maybe he just made the apes as a test to see if people are, because he knew. Yeah, I just kind of thought, but maybe not. Who knows? I'll ask him in heaven. But yeah, it's.
You know what? I think it was his biggest reason for every single thing he made, because they're really cool. And yes, and I think you got to keep in mind, God made this stuff so that we could enjoy it.
Right.
And chimpanzees and gorillas and apes, they're wonderful. And by the way, they are 98% of us, genetically for the most part. So you could say, they're very close. Actually, they're not that close. But here's the key. If we had creationism, we'd see what we're seeing now. If we had evolution, we'd still see this.
Right.
Okay. And microevolution, which, by the way, you got to keep in mind, things change, right? We would see, if we had a creator, we would see that each species could change a little bit.
Adapt. Yeah. I mean,
you got to be able to adapt to survive. A creator would not make species unable to adapt to their surroundings. That would be dumb.
Right.
An almighty creator is probably not going to be dumb. The odds
probably not.
Odds against that are pretty strong. And so, but you wouldn't see difference within the species. Okay. Let me jump through just a few of the if-thens. Could I do that?
Yes, please.
All right. If creation were true, let's say if Genesis 1 through 3 were true, then mankind would be different from all other creatures in ways making us like God. The God that we see in Genesis 1. And, I talked about this last time I was on the show with you. We know 3 things about God from Genesis 1. Number 1, he is spirit, which means he's eternal. Mm-hmm. Okay. Number 2, he has progressive creativity.
Yep.
Okay. He makes this on day 1 and it was good. Then makes this on day 2 and it was good. He's not creating to adapt and survive to his surroundings. He doesn't have to. He's doing it for his pleasure, making bigger, better, littler, better, more better things, and progressing with his use of creativity. And number 3, he's absolutely unselfish because you have a spiritual God making a physical universe for which he has no use.
Right.
So he's making it entirely for someone else. Okay.
Yeah.
And so we know these 3 things. So, and then it says he made all these, animals and creatures, but then he stops and he makes mankind like him.
Right.
Okay. Not the rest of the creatures. So if creation is true, we should be like him in those 3 ways, and the rest of the creatures shouldn't.
Right.
Well, guess what? To our knowledge, we're the only creatures with a concept of eternity.
Right.
Gee, what might happen to me when I die? Okay. Number 2, we have progressive creativity. It makes us the dominant species on the planet. We have the desire and ability to progress with our use of creativity from generation to generation to generation. Mm-hmm. No other species has that. Beavers are making the same dams. Birds are making the same nests. Ants are making the same anthills that they've made for thousands of years. They have no desire or ability to progress.
Right.
We do. We have to constantly progress. That doesn't come with intelligence because it's not tied to intelligence anywhere in the animal kingdom.
Right.
Do you see where I'm going with this?
I see where you're going, yeah.
Okay.
Because dolphins are really smart.
Yeah. You have apes and dolphins are highly intelligent, but they have no more progressive creativity than a larvae.
Yeah.
Okay. There is no progression of progressive creativity up through the levels of intelligence in the animal kingdom. It all happens with us. And finally, selfishness. Now, we are very selfish, but that comes in Genesis 2 and 3. Okay. Yeah. But here's the big thing. But we value unselfishness above all things. We care about someone's motives. We don't just care about what they do and what we get from it, like an animal. An animal, it's what they do, what I get from it.
Right.
They pet me, they feed me, they do this, they do that, they don't threaten me. We care much more about the motives.
Yeah.
So, let's say, you're a teenage girl, you're going on a date with a guy and he does all the right things, says all the right things, he buys you dinner and everything, and you're like, wow, what a great guy, he's doing great. This is great. Then you find out his motives. Yeah. They're underhanded. And I'm not just saying that they're physical or whatever. Maybe he wants to be seen with you. Maybe he's trying to make his girlfriend jealous, who you didn't know he had a girlfriend. You see what I'm going with this? Mm-hmm. You care about his motives. Suddenly, all the good things he did for you mean nothing.
Yep.
But if you're an animal, you don't care. You only care about the stuff you get. So in all 3 of those ways, we're like him. Now, if evolution were true, we would be fundamentally the same as the animals. There would be a clear progression for those 3 from the animals to us, but there isn't.
Right.
Okay, next thing. If Genesis 6 were true, we'd see billions of dead things buried in rock layers, laid down by water all over the earth. And that's not mine. I stole that from Ken Ham. Okay.
Yeah.
And what do we see? We see billions of dead things buried in rock layers, laid down by water all over the earth. We see exactly what we think we should see. If evolution happens slowly over billions of years, we would see billions of transitional features all the way through. We wouldn't just see creatures you could line up. We would see, hundreds of steps in the development of everything, like an elbow. We'd see hundreds of steps within that, creating an elbow. We'd see hundreds of steps toward an eye socket, hundreds of steps toward, partial eye sockets, partial hip bones, partial everything. Guess what? We see the first one, Genesis 6, we see none of the second.
Right.
It's absent from the fossil record, but this happened over billions of years, gradually, piece by piece by piece. Really, you should see as many partial features as completed ones. You do not. You see fully completed ones, all within kinds.
Right.
You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Sorry to I'll let you jump in.
No, I love it. I love it. Keep on going.
Okay. One more. If creation happened, then mutations and diversification, that means going from, one wolf to many different kinds of dogs, and finally pugs, which aren't dogs at all. Can you imagine?
They're so cute.
Yeah, but, let's face it, a pug is a mistake. And, they're adorable. I happen to love them. But can you imagine a pack of pugs trying to take down a deer? And
oh, no.
The deer would be freaked out, just so you know. And he'd be wondering, maybe I need to get these pugs counseling. But, the great diversification, well, these things would be because of added information to the genetic code. Okay? Yeah. Adding information more and more and more. You have to have that with evolution. As you go up from simple one cell up to us and beyond, you have to be adding information to the genetic code. Now, if evolution is true, you already started way up, and the mutations and diversification would generally subtract information from the genetic code. Guess which one happens?
Right.
Subtraction.
Right.
It's all subtraction.
Yeah, you never see addition to. It's always,
exactly.
And it's like the law of, is it entropy? Entropy, thank you.
Yeah.
Everything's getting worse, right?
Right. Now, when two pugs, mate, tragically, you're only going to get a pug. I'm sorry, it's the way it is. You're not going to get a wonderful wolf out of that. It's something cool.
He'd probably grow up and then eat his parents. I don't know.
I adore pugs. I really
so
do.
Cute.
I'm so pathetic. But, do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Everything seems to indicate one way. Okay, how much time do we have left?
We're halfway there, so we got plenty of time. We got about 10 more minutes.
Oh, good. Okay, next thing I want you to look at, once again, if, then. That's what evolutionists leave out, okay? And I want everybody who's hearing me right now to understand, I fully was all in on evolution. I am not. Why? Because I became a Christian and convinced myself it isn't true because I need a big daddy in the sky so I can feel good? No, actually, I never cared about any of that, okay? Yeah. It was because of evidence. What does Romans 1:20 say? For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen,
right?
So that men are without excuse. Folks, the evidence has to be obvious. If you look at those first three things from Genesis 1, it's already obvious. Right. We are totally different from the animals in ways that make us like God.
Right.
Okay. And you can't see any path to those things in evolution. Okay. I want to take a look at the eye and the feather.
Okay.
And we're going to do it quickly. All right.
Okay.
I'm warning you.
We're ready.
All right.
We're ready.
Well, for the eye, if evolution is true, if then, right, you have to be able to see a natural selection path from the first photosensitive cells to the completed eye.
Right.
Okay. Now, natural selection requires that each step be a step up.
Right.
Okay. In other words, each added facet needs to be advantageous to the species.
Right. And then it keeps it.
And by the way, not momentarily, but for a long period of time, not for one member, not for one pug, but for all pugs.
Yeah.
Okay. And it has to be advantageous and be maintained then by the species, making it able to survive more.
Right.
All right. Here's the problem when we look at the eye. And, sometimes we call it irreducible complexity. Forget words like that. Who cares? What matters is this. There are a bunch of things in the eye. You got the pupil. Around that, you got the iris that makes the pupil dilate and get bigger or smaller. You got the cornea. You got the lens behind all that. You got the retina, which is the photosensitive cells, okay? You got that at the back. You got the optic nerve, which takes the information to the brain. By the way, the eye is really just an extension of the brain. But all of this is in an eye socket.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have 6 muscles around all that, by the way. Did you know that? You got 6 muscles around your eye.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you got 2 that make it go up and down, 2 that make it, you can go look left and right. And then you got 2 others. If you were to tilt your head right now, your eyes wouldn't tilt with them. Your eyes actually stay upright.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
I never tested that out before.
That's why you can lean your head like that and still drive and not kill a lot of people. You know, it's really cool. See, God made this because he knew one day we'd be in traffic. This is why
Right.
This is why he did this. But here's the big thing. A lot of these things, the retina is, the photosensitive cells. There's advantage to having those. A creature can, even a single cellular creature, can sense light and move toward and away. But a lot of these things are totally worthless without the others. If you don't have an iris, okay, the cornea is worthless. If you don't have a fully formed cornea, and I don't mean a partial cornea or a partial iris, you got to have the whole thing. Otherwise, the pupil is not going to hold up, okay?
Right.
And what about the lens? What about the entire eye itself, the lens and the retina? You can't have, none of these things could develop gradually on their own.
Right, because I was just thinking when you're talking, like...
They'd be disadvantageous.
Yeah, so according to evolution, the eye developing in that species, well, they would die right away anyways if you just developing up. There would be no way for them for the eye in that case to keep on going partial. I mean, that would they would all die.
Yeah, well, perfectly put. Let me ask you something. What good would an iris do for a creature that didn't have any of the other parts? Would it be advantageous or disadvantageous to have an iris?
Well, disadvantageous.
Right. It would just be some added thing on the surface of this creature. It'd be selected out. It'd be left off. Why? It would slow you down.
And can I just mention this? You can't see. None of these factors say you can see. So there's blind creatures going around until the eye was fully formed. Well,
you could say that they started with photosensitive cells, and that would comprise the retina eventually, and that would have some advantage. But here's the problem with that. I listened to Richard Dawkins. He's an atheist.
Yeah.
And he would say, and what these cells did is they collected, and they finally collected in a way where they were cupped, and this way that they could bring in light from different angles. And I'm like, cupped into what? Excuse me, what held them in the cup if you don't have an eye socket?
Right.
And why would you have an eye socket before you have an eye? You do realize that having a big indentation and a hole in your head would probably be a disadvantage to a species.
Right.
I mean, if it were an advantage, well, I hope I have dozens. I need lots of holes in my head. That would just be terrific. Let me try that really quick. I'll be right back after the break.
Right.
You see, or let's say you even have a fully formed eye but no eye socket. Then you've got this bulge on the surface of a creature that would come off in the first fight.
Right.
Okay, it's worthless. It wouldn't be advantageous. What if you had all that, but you didn't have an optic nerve to take the information back to the brain so it can be translated? What if you had no part of the brain to translate it?
Yeah, and didn't the brain have to also develop too to talk to the eye? I mean...
Well, and once again, the eye is an extension of the brain, but yes, it did.
Yeah.
Okay, all of these things had to happen. All right, but they had to happen virtually simultaneously because each part on its own is worthless.
Right.
The only part that's got some worth on its own is the retina. Okay, do we got a couple minutes or no?
Yes, let's keep on going.
Okay, let's talk about feathers. And I don't want to go into too much depth, feathers. You know what a feather is. You got the quill, you got the rachis, it's the shaft. You got the vein, the barbs, the barbules, the barbicles. And these are very important. Now, as you know, the feather is incredibly light, but incredibly strong and flexible. You know that. Mm-hmm. And if one is frayed, you can draw it through your fingers and then it, comes back out. Well, what's happening when you do that is those barbules are relocking together and making it so it can hold air just enough while being incredibly light to, achieve flight.
Right.
Okay, you with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, supposedly with natural selection, you realize a lot of those things would be disadvantageous along the way. They'd be in the way. Okay, because this supposedly came from scales. This supposedly came from, and even the movies are trying to put feathers on dinosaurs now, which is kind of fun.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, it's really stupid, but it's colorful and it makes for a good movie. Anyway, what they would do is that they would say, over time, the scales became feathers. Well, there's no intermediary between scales and feathers that works. A feather holds the air.
Right.
But it holds it in a flexible way.
Right.
Okay, to where it can instantly, remember the wind we've had of the last week?
Yeah,
Yes, where you didn't even, if you were pointed the right way, you didn't even have to turn on your car and you made it all the way to work. It was really cool.
I was actually thinking about the birds, like where'd they go during this weather, you know?
Well, the thing is, a bird can fly through that wind extremely well. Why? Because its feathers are amazing. And I won't go into it, we don't have time, but the complexity of how they can adapt and the musculature of how it connects to every one of these, the rachis and the veins and the barbs, it flexes them in certain ways that can adjust to the wind along the way.
Wow.
It's really incredible. Well, here's the thing. The scale is a plate, okay? Any fraying, because basically they would say that the scales, they had to be frayed, and over time they frayed. Any fraying of a scale, it's going to hold air less.
Yeah, this takes great imagination.
Yes, first of all, it's once again, over billions of years, would it be in the fossil record, these frayed scales? Yeah, yes. They'd be all over the place. Guess what? There are none. And secondly, it would be, first of all, it wouldn't protect the creature as well, because now you got frayed scales. That's not very good. Go outside wearing half a coat. Let me know how you do in the winter. And secondly, that they would be holding air less because of the fraying.
Right.
Next, the feather is an interlocking system. Okay, once again, that can interlock or unlock, based on how the bird wants to do it. It's incredible.
Wow.
Okay, there's no intermediate. There's nothing in the fossil record. There are no partial feathers in the fossil record. Once again, if it were over billions of years, we'd have scads of most of the fossil record. I would say 99% would be nothing but intermediaries between what was then and what is now.
Right.
You wouldn't have everything within their kinds, bird kind, dog kind, and so forth. You wouldn't have that. You wouldn't have one species that is totally dominant on the planet because of everything it has that makes us like God. Okay, we got a minute left or no?
Yeah, we got to wrap up. We got a minute.
Okay, then let me wrap up.
This has been great. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, no problem. Let me wrap up with this. Folks, you were created. Okay, Romans 1:20 is true. It is that obvious. You are without excuse if you don't believe in it. And the only reason people can get themselves to not believe in it is because they turn off if-then.
Right.
They won't look at if-then. But let me ask you this, while you're feeling intimidated, if they were so smart, would they have to stack the deck and run every school? They're not. You're smart too. Believe in yourself. Believe in God.
Amen. Oh, very well said. Thank you, Andy. We're going to have Andy back in the future and continue this discussion. It is fascinating. Thanks for tuning in to the Corner Cafe. Go to our website, cornercaferadio.com. You can check out the videos that we have up there. And now, as always, it's great to be with you, and we're going to see you at the cafe next week.